welcome to the podcast. This is Spoons and Knives, the Autoimmune podcast. Today, we have a special guest, Diz, who works in the cannabis field in Oregon, and he will be telling us a little bit more about how to use CBD, how to look at CBD, how to figure out what works best for you, all the ins and outs. This is meant to be a beginner's 101 intro to CBD. And for anyone before you go to your local dispensary for the first time, this might give you a bit of an inside look into what you're looking for. With that said, hello, Diz.
Hello.
So let's get started right off the bat between the first question, which is what is the difference between CBD and THC?
Well, CBD is a non-psychoactive cannabinoid inside of a cannabis or a hemp plant. So where THC would affect your mind, give you that classic high feeling, CBD more or less affects your endocrimatic system, your central nervous system, muscular system. It's antimicrobial. It's good for like sore muscles and stuff. So I like to tell people that I work with that are getting introduced to it. It's more like think about how lavender would affect the body and put that on a higher level.
Okay. So when it comes to CBD, I know that there's different kinds of like families or plants. I know the most common ones I've heard of are like sativa and indica, and I know we even have some hybrid strains. Could you tell us a little bit about all of those and maybe when it's best to use them?
Well, when you're thinking about things like sativa, indica, and hybrid, you're not really in the CBD realm anymore. So, like, consider CBD as existing within. So, if you're thinking about a cannabis plant, something that has THC in it, the CBD is just another cannabinoid that already exists, like which also exists in like lichen and other different plants. It can
Like
exist
the
in other
moss?
places.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. There's actually a whole brand out here called Grön. Uh, that's Gron with two little dots over it, and they actually have a whole line of chocolate bars that don't have cannabis involved with it at all, but still provide CBD benefits.
That's
Um,
awesome.
we also sell our CBD. A lot of the store bought CBD, like if you go into like a fancy market and they'll have a CBD shelf. A lot of that stuff's derived from lichen and not cannabis at all.
Interesting.
Yeah, so like sativa, indica, and hybrid more have to do with. It's been really misconstrued. This is something that has a fascinating Vice article on and cool little YouTube series where sativa is like a type of plant and an indica is a type of plant where
Mhm.
the indica comes from a region where it's a little colder.
Mhm.
It's a stouter plant, has a longer like grow time, and
Right.
yields a smaller amount. Where sativa, it comes from hotter southern regions, and it's a taller, skinny plant that yields smaller, a little bit better yield, but like very quickly. Um, and the hybrid is just a mixture of those two. So you can safely say, at least I would safely say, that almost all cannabis that's available throughout the world, unless it's something called a land race, is a hybrid plant.
That's
And
interesting. So
yeah,
the perspective I've got is I'm from Ontario, Canada. We have the Ontario Cannabis Store, and it actually will label like CBD products as either indica, sativa, or hybrid. So it's so fascinating to know that that's not actually really even in the CBD world.
yeah, because the CBD is going to exist in all those anyway. I
Right.
could. What they're probably doing is they're getting their CBD strains. Now, do these CBD strains that you're seeing these on, do they have THC in them?
I think some of them do. Here, let me. Sorry for the clicking, guys. I actually have it open in front of me. Uh, one of these. Oh gosh, I'm so unprepared. Yeah, I think so we have like CBD soft gels, CBD 1 to 20 oils, and they're listed as either blends or hybrids or like indica.
Okay, so because we have a lot of CBD flower and we have 20 to 1, 10 to 1. There's a 500 to 1 for
Oh my
people that
god.
yeah, that are really. We have 1,000 milligram tincture that has 1 milligram per every 100 milligrams of CBD per
Mhm.
serving, which is generally 3 to 4 drops. And that won't have a psychoactive feel to it at all, But what I like to tell people, and I truly do feel this way, that like CBD on its own can have a lot of benefits, and people that like try to shy away from cannabis because they don't want to feel high or anything tend to lean on the hemp-derived CBD that doesn't have any psychoactive effects. But the THC on an atomic level, like help the CBD bond to those parts in your brain and your bloodstream to make them activate more. So you can get um, you can get more of a reaction out of something that is a 20 to 1 than just straight CBD any day of the week.
I guess that's something important to note as you mentioned that in the States, you guys actually do sell more like hemp derived, where I'm quite sure that most of the provincial sellers in Canada, we don't sell hemp derived at all. So like all of our products are just like actually like marijuana derived.
Yeah, we're one of the most regulated industries. Like I'm in Oregon, and we have a really incredibly regulated industry. They don't keep people's personal information because that's incredibly illegal, but
Right.
they track all the sales that we do. So like if a pound goes into a shop, it has a metric attached to it that has a serial number essentially, and that serial number is attached to every single gram that is sold from that bag and goes out of the store. So when you're dealing with something that is that restricted on the state level and you still have federal mandates against um, the sale of cannabis across state lines or the sale of cannabis nationally, you have to find these little workarounds to uh, get medicine to the people. So we have a lot of hemp options because of that.
So would you say generally there's like a large misconception, especially in the States, with this being just a very unregulated industry that it's really just drugs and that it's not really medicine? When in fact I can tell just by from what you're talking about in my own experience. I never even used CB like weed at all before I was sick. That really it is just medicine. We're really just trying to get medicine to the people.
Yeah, I really do feel like it is medicine. I have a customer, and I want to say he's around 68, 70 years old, veteran. He's a chronic pain sufferer, and he was dosed on, I think they had him on 8 different pills a day, including like 3 doses of Oxycontin, once in the morning, once in the afternoon,
My
once in the
goodness.
evening. Yeah, it was an insane amount of pharmaceuticals being pushed through his body, which can damage your kidneys and your livers and thin your blood and do so many dangerous things to you. And we got him convinced one day, essentially, he was a little shy about using cannabis coming from a really classic mindset, uh, and we convinced him to get a medical card, and he started taking medical strength gummies because we have recreational and medical strength.
Okay.
So being a regulated industry means that if you're a cannabis card holder, a medical card holder, you can get stronger medicine. And if
Right.
you're a recreational user, you're incredibly restricted to the amount that you're allowed to have on you as a person or buy during a day. And he ended up like losing 2 of his doses of Oxycontin, and he just replaced them with gummies. He eats he eats like about, I'd say, 500 milligrams of cannabis a day.
And he's doing much better.
He's doing much better. Yeah.
I know that for me, I have been given, so I have lupus for anyone that doesn't know. And a lot of that is like a great deal of muscle pain. And I do know that for like myself personally, some of the things that I've been given for that is like I've been given baclofen, I've been like given cyclobenzapine or prime on top of already taking things like hydroxychloroquine with huge side effects and methotrexate or azathioprine or Imuran. And these are all like chemotherapy or malarial type drugs. Like they're not really great for you.
Yeah.
So the last thing I really want is to be taking like baclofen or something else like that on top of it. And I do find that taking like, CBD for my own personal use does kind of negate the need for that, which has been nice. So I can attest to that as well.
I can also, on a as a chronic pain sufferer, I have psoriasis, pretty moderate to severe case of it. Um, and I use a lot of CBD topicals,
Oh,
which
nice.
is like topicals is a subject that people like they're either with or they're not with, and I feel like it does a lot for at least the inflammation that that brings because like I'm itchy all the time.
Right.
I'm not, I'm not very comfortable, and I have blemishes on my face that make me want to scratch my face, and like um, using a CBD I use a 1-to-1 CBD THC lotion
Hmm.
with it's a mix of lavender and mint and a whole bunch of other like nice herbs in it. It's very soothing, and it does have a calming effect. It doesn't really uh, get you high or anything. It's just it has like you would have to like soak in a bathtub of straight THC for an hour if you wanted to get stoned off this stuff.
I was going to be my next question is, so if you're putting it on the skin, we all know that the skin's the largest organ in the body. It does absorb what you put on it, but in the amount you're putting on for like a hand lotion or a rub or like a face cream, you're not actually getting enough to even get you high, right?
Oh, never. But it'd be very rare unless like you have unusually large pores for some reason, and your skin absorbs things at a higher rate. Um, but I would really want more people to consider topical salves are really incredible. There's a hot salve, so imagine like something like an icy hot sort of like sports rub,
Right.
and but it only has the heat to it. And my partner has back problems, and we rub that on their back, and it's the only thing that seems to make their back not hurt so they can get to sleep. So like people that are having joint problems, like people that are suffering from arthritis, I would
Mhm.
really, really say like go out, find a really medium strength like CBD, THC blend, like salve if you got the time to let it dry if you're just sitting at home, which a lot of us are right now,
Mhm.
or like a lotion if you need something that'll dry in 10 minutes, and give that a try on your achy joints because it really can have some benefits to it.
Any brands that you personally recommend?
I use because Oregon is everything that's sold in the United States is not going to be sold in different states, or it's very
Oh,
rare that.
okay. Never mind then.
Yeah, yeah. So like I can just say that if you find a brand that you like, go with it. But if you find that the first brand that you use doesn't work for you, don't let that like shut you down. Let that be a learning point to not use that anymore. That might not work for you.
Fair enough. So earlier you mentioned that you use a 1-to-1 with the cream when it comes to your face with your psoriasis. When it comes
Yeah.
to tincture in general or flour, etc., what are we really looking at with these ratios? And do you necessarily want the highest, like a 20-to-1 or like you said, 1,000-to-1? Like, is there a benefit there to having the THC?
It's really just a personal comfort level because if you have something like a tincture, tinctures are pretty potent versions of all these things. And when you have a 1-to-1, you're really just kind of trying to pay attention to the amount of milligrams that are in the tincture over a fluid ounce.
Mhm.
Um, so uh, you have anything ranging from a lot of them start at 100 milligrams of each
Mhm.
and range all the way up into the thousands depending on what state you're in and how strong they can make them. I know that we carry a 1-to-1 1,000 milligram things on either side.
I will caveat that and say that in Canada, you will not find that. You will probably find something closer to like 60 or 70 milligrams of, say, like maybe like THC or CBD at a time. Just so in case anyone wants to know the comparison.
Well, I mean, recreationally, so don't. I hope you don't misunderstand. Like recreationally, like within edibles, like some like because they don't count tinctures here as an edible. They count it as a concentrate, and
Okay.
a concentrate can have up to like an edible can have up to 50 milligrams per package, and they usually dose those out at 10 pieces, 5 milligrams a piece. Some companies will do 5 pieces at 10 milligrams a piece, and a lot of companies will just do one small piece of candy as 50 milligrams. That's a general like ballpark for your everyday person walking around. But like the medical people try to lean on something a little bit stronger. Do you have RSO in Canada?
RSO. Um, what's the acronym mean?
Simpson oil.
No, I don't think so.
So Rick RSO is hands down the most potent version of a cannabis derived oil that you can get.
Mhm.
I don't want to go into the specifics of the processing of that because I don't know 100%.
Also,
I
it's not
just
exactly beginner friendly either.
It's not beginner friendly. I definitely say like, hey, if you're having like severe issues, maybe consider this because you're gonna get pretty messed up, but you're not gonna be in like being that you're a chronic pain sufferer, like opioids and the barbiturates and how they can affect your mind where it feels like time traveling. Like you're
Yeah,
just
or
kind of
you just
like
get so foggy. It's
yeah, you're not gonna get there. Like, if anything, you're gonna get very sleepy and just go to sleep for a couple hours,
Mhm,
but you don't wake up with the hangover or anything. So, like the size, one dose is the size of a long grain of rice,
mhm,
and that is a lot of medicine. And usually, when people are dealing with extreme amounts of pain, I had a customer that was a cancer patient,
right,
and they used that as means of pain control, so they weren't taking so many pain pills all the time on top of all the medications they had to do for
right.
chemo.
Yeah, because, chemo, a lot like lupus or other more like, autoimmune-based conditions, you end up taking, like, methotrexate or things like that that are already so incredibly hard on the body. The last thing you want is to continue to overload your liver and your kidneys.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody's overdosed on cannabis
No, I
or
did some research
CBD.
there. You can't actually die from an overdose of cannabis, you just get really tripped out.
Yeah, and go to sleep.
All right. So then let's say somebody listening says, this is a great idea. I'm incredibly intrigued. We already talked about it a little bit. So what are the ways you can like get CBD or quote smoke up without actually smoking up? Like, or is it just, it's not just a flower and a pipe. So what are kind of our options here?
You could have an edible,
Hmm.
you can have a tincture, and you can use RSO. You can also, I really like these for myself personally. There are little pain patches.
Oh,
So there are CBD like slap-on patches that you could put on where your spinal cord meets your cerebral cortex at
mhm,
the back of your head.
mhm.
If you put a nice little patch there, it gives a nice little nerve calming effect.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's just loads of ways if you're not comfortable with smoking, like there's lots of ways to get it into you. Like my mom is in Arizona, which is a recreational state now, but she had her medical card before,
Mhm.
came to visit me in Oregon, and I turned her on to drinkables,
Hmm.
which are really, I think, my favorite edible type, because you can paste them, and if you want just a little bit, you can pour yourself a glass of orange juice, take a tincture or take a syrup, and just pour it into your drink, give it a little mix, and then you're just enjoying an orange juice
Right.
with a little CBD in it, and I like mine with the THC, and it's a nice way to get through your day.
So I know in the Ontario cannabis store we have it's almost like fizzies, like spirits, and we
Oh yeah.
have like teas, like actually like tea bags and that sort of thing. So I know that those are also available here if anybody is interested. If you don't want to mix your own.
I think my favorite edibles so far that I've seen, at least, like it's uh, THC CBD hot sauce.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I thought that was really
I guess they would take care of the burning, right?
yeah, just like imagine putting that on some pork chops or something. Like you're gonna be double sleepy that day.
Oh my god, food coma to the max. So you mentioned, I guess, since you did mention sort of with the patch right at the cervicogenic base of this, like at the neck of the spine kind of area, how that gives you sort of a nice like buzz. When it comes to CBD, do we have to worry about things like body high versus head high? These are like terminology I think people are accustomed to hearing when it comes to like traditional marijuana.
No, I wouldn't say high is what the right frame of mind to put CBD. And I feel like that's something that I have to tell a lot of my customers that are new to it is it's got a calming effect. So you'll feel relaxed. Not like numb, you're not gonna get buzzed out, like, you're gonna have more of an overwhelming, relaxing feeling. You're gonna be a little your body, your muscular system's gonna untense a little bit. So it doesn't affect your brain. It is non-psychoactive.
I think that's the one thing most people are the most concerned about. And I think, too, because in Canada, we specifically label whether it's sativa or indica, and that comes with the connotations when used with traditional marijuana. I feel like people are really scared of like getting high or having some kind of weird effect. So it's good to hear it repeated again and again, like even just in the short time you've been here, that it's just not, that's not what happens.
No, that's not the case. And I really hope, like, research being so abundantly available, like, you can Google anything, and making sure that you're going to the proper resources and medical digests and whatnot is super important. But like personal experience is gonna be your best option when you're trying something like this. Like I never understood personally because I lived in a very illegal state for a long time, and I moved out here so I didn't have to worry about that sort of stuff anymore. I decided, like, this is a lifestyle that I'm choosing.
Right.
This is what I want to do. How am I going to do that comfortably? I don't understand the difference of somebody trying tequila for the first time and somebody trying CBD for the first time.
Right. If anything, I think you're safer to do the CBD, to be
Yeah,
frank.
like, what are you going to do? Feel really calm and sit down on the couch? Like,
Right.
my goodness, what a bad day.
Oh my goodness, it's nap time.
Oh dear, maybe I should go walk the dog and wave to the neighbors. Like, it's I see it as a really silly thing and something that it's the age group and the demographics really are what you're fighting against is like because I've worked in a lot of different fields in the cannabis field, and being involved in like being a retail associate, I think is probably the most important job when it comes to getting people introduced to these sort of ideas. And knowing that you're going to a place where somebody's well versed in what they're talking about and not just trying to sell you something is important.
I think that's the scariest part when you go in as somebody who doesn't know anything about this, is going, am I just getting a really good sales pitch, or does this person really know what they're talking about?
Well, that's why you should definitely read into it yourself. But don't like something that I run into on a day-to-day basis when I'm talking to people is they will go into research and then
Mhm.
they'll get bad information or they'll only get one side of the story, and I need to be able to communicate that well to them, and it
Right.
could come off as a sales pitch, but realistically, like, I've been doing this for 5.5 years. It's my day-to-day job. Like, much like you go to a mechanic to fix your car, like you are relying on those sales associates to have that sort of information. And I can tell you, at least in my state and in my store, which I am the assistant manager of, is is I make sure that a lot of my employees are well versed in different things. Because are you familiar with the term terpenes?
I am, but it's one of those things that I feel like most people know nothing about. But when I was getting my green card, my proper medical license in Canada, because it gives you access to different quality, a different level of quality. That was one of the things that I was asked as my RN is like, all right, do you know what like terpenes are? Do you know what to look for when you're looking between like regular commercial like marijuana and when you're looking at more medical grade marijuana? And like, I didn't know.
Yeah, it's actually has more of an effect than the CBD or the THC as a collective whole. So, um, since Oregon at least has a lot of testing that's involved with our regulations, like we have to send everything to a lab, we have to get them tested for pesticides, we have to get them tested for their terpene counts and their THCs and their CBDs and their CBNs and CBGs and all the different cannabinoids that are involved in the plant. That we get a good insight of actually what's involved in the plant itself, and I try to get people hip to terpenes, which are like, for the lack of a really long explanation, they're like the essential oils of the cannabis plants. It's
All
like
right.
what you smell and what you taste, and like, when you smell something, it's like, oh, that has a very limey smell to it. There's actually a terpene called limonene, and it generally has more of an uplifting effect. So thinking about what cannabis, what pardon me, what Canada might be doing, since I haven't really looked into it, I didn't know I'm going to after this interview. Um, is they're probably using the sativa, indica, and hybrid based on the terpenes that are in them, because something
That
that
would make
has
sense.
yeah, so they're like I was unaware that they had gotten that far into the testing practices. So you're probably to, I guess, kind of like go over what we talked about before, is more than likely like if you have there's a terpene called myrcene, and myrcene generally has a really tiring effect, a really sleepy, dopey effect. So more than likely, when you're getting these CBD things, is they're testing for the CBDs that are the cannabis plant that has the highest amount of myrcene, the lowest amount of THC, because for all the cannabinoids and all the um, terpenes that you're putting in that a plant has, it replaces those different things like THC.
So, in Canada, if you get your medical license, I went through CanaMed. If anyone is curious, they have to give you printouts of the lab reports for the products that you buy.
That's brilliant.
So, what when I get that printout and I'm looking at that lab report and I'm going, "Huh, those are some pretty numbers." What does that mean? What is something that you should be looking for as a consumer when it comes to terpenes?
Are we still considering just the CBD market, or somebody that's trying not to get high? Or are
Um,
we considering everything?
we can go in any direction you want.
I would say if if you're looking for your medical stuff, and you depending on what you're looking for, if you're having, say, insomnia, like you're having issues sleeping, you want to look for a higher number with CBD and CBN.
Okay.
So CBN is actually the cannabinoid that breaks down in your brain, that makes you sleepy.
Okay.
And if you're looking for something that you want to deal with more inflammation, you're looking for higher numbers of CBD and CBG. So it's really, when you're looking at the numbers, figure out what your pain is, how would you like to take care of it, and then look up the cannabinoids that would best benefit that.
Do you have any resources for doing that kind of research? Because this is fascinating to me. This is something I didn't know about.
Actually, funny enough, I think the best resource here, at least, like there's Leafly. It's spelled like leaf lie. A lot of people just use it as like, I'm gonna look up what this strain does, but they really do go into a pretty heavy explanation. There's also a cool site called allbud.com,
Mhm.
and Allbud goes into further testing. But if you're, I don't know how Canada works or how open their information is, but you can even go to the labs reference sites here. So if we have a lab called Alpha Labs here that do the testing for a lot of the flour that we carry. I
Mhm.
can go to their site, look up the number that my cannabis is involved with, and then see what the testing numbers are there.
So, if for somebody in the States, especially like for Oregon, for because that's where you're generally working, if someone had questions about that, would they be able to go to, say, like your store and say, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody to help me figure out like what I'm looking for to look this sort of things up"? Would a retail associate generally be able to help you figure out what lab that came from?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
It's actually on the tag when you buy something in Oregon, the metric, the lab, the harvest date, the date we got it into the store, and the date that it left the lab are all on the label itself.
So super regulated.
Incredibly regular. Like I cannot emphasize like the whole idea that everybody is just like, when you walk into a cannabis store, that you're just gonna find some buzzed out hippie guy behind the counter going, "Yeah, what's up, man?" Like it's just not what you're running into anymore. Yeah, like we're I think almost a decade into being a legal state. Like we went medical and then we went recreational 6 years ago.
Right. So, I guess that brings me to a different question, which is so in the States, when you get your medical license, what sort of different, like, do you have access to different products? Is it just that you're allowed to buy in states where it's only legal medically, or what does that get you generally?
So in Oregon and in most other states in the United States, when you get a medical marijuana card, you get access to higher milligrams per package
Mhm.
when it comes to tinctures, edibles, RSO, things like that, and you're allowed to buy more cannabis at one time. So the recreational level is you can have 1 ounce, you can buy, pardon me, you can buy 1 ounce of flour. You can have up to 72 fluid ounces of a tincture.
Mhm.
You can have up to a pound of edibles, which is can vary in milligrams because they're actually basing that on the weight of the food and not the weight of the amount
The
of
product, yeah.
milligrams. Um, as a medical customer, you can buy up to a quarter of a pound
Oh my god.
or at one time at a store in the state of Oregon, regardless of whether or not you're recreational or medical, you cannot be carrying more than 4 ounces on you at a time.
I'm not quite sure what the limit carryable is in Canada. I know that when you buy the Ontario Cannabis Store, and again, this is just Ontario, it gives you a little flag next to your cart that says like X grams out of your 30-gram limit. And that's non medical when you're buying. That's about what you can pay. And you can buy CBD in Canada without having a medical license. I'm just, in case someone didn't know. And when you do get your license, I don't remember. I didn't end up keeping my license because it was actually it was more costly to buy the higher grade product, obviously, and I unfortunately was unable to like sustain that. But I don't remember there being a flag. I think it just gets delivered and shipped to me as much as I want. I wouldn't say that I would go trying to buy like 8 bottles at a time, but certainly within the regular use of trying like 3 products at a time or 4 products at a time, I've never had an issue. I would say too in Canada, if you are having a hard time with things, if you can afford the upfront cost, as soon as you have your license in Canada, it does become a tax write-off because it's a medical product.
It's the same here in Oregon, which I try to let people remember when they come into the stores. Like, keep in mind that if you're a medical card holder, you can write that off on your taxes, which the card is good for a year. You have to go to a doctor. It's around $150 to get the card, and the doctors can range. What I really like is they've made it pretty affordable here. So since it's a state regulated thing, if you're on Medicaid or something like that, they actually operate on a sliding scale in those offices.
Oh
So
wow,
you can get a doctor to sign off on a medical card for as low as 50 US.
that's not bad at
And
all.
and product wise, like I'd like to say that I'm pretty proud of my state in making it the cost of getting these things really reasonable. I know that like our you can go pick up 3.5 grams of something for $10, and if you needed a tincture, I know places that sell them for 20. They're trying to make it readily available so people don't have to, uh, go into poverty to try to take care of themselves.
Right. It should be medicine. It should be accessible.
Yeah,
I think the if you are in Ontario or if you are in a province that shares the carry sundial, the 20 to 1 I believe is around $20. I think. It's a little like a bottle of tincture, so like pretty affordable to start up. If you're going through a company like Canamed, which is an entirely online interview process and the whole deal, it's actually covered and it's free. You don't actually pay for your getting your card or anything like that, which I thought was really great, which works well with the theme of Canada having sort of a universal healthcare. So, but comparatively, like $50 in the States is not bad.
it's really not. And like I'm hoping for federalization soon. Like I would like to see it a nationwide thing. Not even on a medical, to be real, not even on a medical standpoint, but more of an industrial standpoint. Because before I got involved in the cannabis field, what pushed me towards it is I was working in a hemp shop that carried um, industrial hemp products. So I sold hempcrete, coats, shampoo, uh, paper, wood materials. Like there was plasticine that you can make out of it. And since it's such a fast yielding crop, like you can grow a hemp field in 4 months if you knew how to take care of it inside and turn that into industrial products and sell them nationwide like that could be a push for us as an economy. And I don't understand why we've been against it for so long. I actually kind of summed that up to why Colorado decided that that was okay is because their state was lit on fire and they lost a fair amount of their logging industry, and then you saw a bump in their hemp industry. I'd really like to see that as a federal thing, as a cash crop for the country, and it could be for Canada as well.
I realistically too. I think it really is just like a new industry, and I feel like there's good regulations in place. There's good research in place. Like countries are starting to legalize and regulate. There are places to look to kind of see how to do it or how to improve. And I'm with you. I think if you tax it as recreational, the way that you would tax alcohol, especially if it's like we're talking about regular marijuana or like not CBD based products, like I don't see the harm in taking that as taxes and helping fund schools and help funding infrastructure. Do you know what I mean? It's a new industry that like keeps things regulated, keeps people safe, and helps the community.
Well, I would even say, like, you can I feel like you could push that sort of ideology with the premises of not paying as many taxes. Like, so people I've talked to in states like Kentucky or Louisiana, and mostly in like states where it's very much illegal, uh, talk about like, well, I don't want to have another thing to pay taxes for, and we have a cannabis tax here. So Oregon doesn't have a sales tax. We have higher taxes for that, but like people go into the store, if it says it's $13.72, that is exactly what that product costs. But when you go into a cannabis store, we have a 20% sales tax, and I like to personally list everything as post tax. So if it's $30, that's what you're paying out the door. But there's a lot of places that um, you go in and they'll say $5 and then it's 8.50. But all those taxes go to pay for the roads and schools and things like that. So that's less that the taxpayer themselves are responsible for at the end of the year,
Right.
because we're taking care of that. It's a billion-dollar industry. It's like infrastructure wise, it's incredibly powerful thing that I don't think we're taking enough control of.
Indeed, I would agree too in terms of the way taxes work in the states, and in Canada a little bit too. To touch on your point of labeling things as post-tax, for any of the Canadians listening, if you go online, it will tell you at the end if you go to one of the provincial stores. So not just I don't know about individual stores like here or there independently, but for provincial stores online, it will tell you this is the price taxes included. So just yeah, I think it's a good policy to just sort of just write it as this is the price out the door.
Yes, please don't, especially in a place like Washington, which is, that's a half an hour drive north of where I live. They do less regulations. They have everything is taxed. They have a sales tax, and they're so confused when they come to our state because they have prepackaged things. It's something that I really appreciate about the Oregon market. Obviously, in COVID, we can't do a lot of this, but a couple years ago, before we were dealing with a pandemic, we were allowed. We have jars of cannabis, and people can get involved with it and smell it, and like we can show them exactly what they're getting, and it doesn't come in a pre-Ziploc package. And I feel like that's more of a killing that idea that we're just selling little baggies out of a store.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And being able to kind of like maybe not touch, but like smell and get a good look and sort of be exposed to the different jars of product. I feel like that really takes sort of the black box off of the product itself.
Yeah. It's seen as a taboo thing, and I really feel like we need to, as a collective unit, just stop that way of thinking.
I mean, that's why we're here. That's why we're talking today,
That's why we're talking. This is why we're doing it.
having the conversation.
Yeah.
So I guess the sort of where I'd like to end here, really briefly, is who should not smoke in your
Who sh
opinion?
In
Because
my opinion,
yeah,
um, I feel like if you have respiratory issues, really consider what you're doing and maybe consider edibles as an option. Like, please don't risk your lungs health for, a medical purpose. You can definitely have a lot of options. I feel like younger people, even though it might be a super tempting thing to do, like it can really, really affect your brain's development.
Yeah, studies are showing like about 19 to 20 is sort of like the safer zone. And before that, you really do risk the way your brain sort of myelinates and lateralizes in terms of like memory later on in life.
Yeah, yeah, I can say that, like, personally, I don't want to come off as a cold fish here, but please don't do that to yourself until you're over 18 years old at least.
Hmm.
And here it's 21 and older, and you have to adhere to that unless you have a medical card. We have medical card holders that are 18 years old, and that's where your brain is really not susceptible to the altercations that can happen from uh, ingesting at too young of an age.
Right. I would say, like, from my own point of view, my background is I have like an honors in psychology, and I've been doing a fair bit of research about this for a while. A lot of medications you can take for things like stabilizers, antipsychotics, even sometimes some antidepressant medication in general, depending on what it is, like SSRIs or SNRIs, et cetera, et cetera. Your medication will tell you if you should or should not um, engage. And if your medication does say like abstain from basically like marijuana and or drinking, because usually it's the same, what that is telling you is that it has the potential to make your meds not effective for you, and your symptoms may come back, or it may interact with your just general mental health or condition by and large. So I think if you are on that spectrum, or you have a family history of schizophrenia, studies have shown if you are, especially if you are younger, if you are engaging in just THC, not necessarily CBD, there is a chance that you may like awaken like what would have been like a non-episode of schizophrenia. So that's sort of something to be aware of. And again, we already talked about it too. If you're under a certain age, there's like real studies that show that it affects the way white matter in the brain develops. And white matter is just when the neuron myelinates and it makes a more efficient pathway. So we want you to have good, efficient pathways. We want that neuroplasticity to stay in individuals. Like, I obviously don't think people underage should be smoking.
Absolutely. I will also say, to add to that, um, if you have manic depression or any sort of like mania, it can, if you rely on it as a medicine, you want to go into the ideas of microdosing and talk to your doctor. Absolutely. Because I know my brother deals with a great deal of, he's manic depressive bipolar with schizophrenic tendencies,
Mm,
and he self-medicates with cannabis. Um,
that's
and
a
I
little bit
know
of a tricky thing to do.
it's incredibly tricky thing to do, and I've asked him many times to consult with his doctor and really consider what you're doing when you're doing that. So if there are people out there that are currently doing that and you're afraid of prescription medicines, like, n- look at research, like I said before, research into what the cannabinoids do, what the terpenes do, how that's going to affect your brain, and how that can affect your mood. And please be very careful if you're on medication and you're doing this.
Exactly. I think my partner gave CBD a try, but he is diagnosed bipolar type 2, and we found when he tried it, because his pharmacist sort of gave a shrug of her shoulders and, I don't know, give it a try instead of telling him yay or nay. So he gave it a go, and basically his meds stopped working for about three, almost 4 days. And he went into like a little hypomanic episode. He was incredibly irritated, incredibly angry. So just be aware. If you're trying something for the first time, maybe have somebody that you know be like monitoring you as well, whether that's somebody you live with or a significant other or a very close friend, and sort of talk about what you're feeling, because you will know, I think.
It's a really good idea to keep a mood journal when you're doing things like that. So if you are going to start experimenting and you are going to start, trying to really understand of how it's mixing with you and how it's actually making you feeling, like, you can turn on a little self-recording or have a little journal, of an hour by hour or day by day of, like, this is how I felt today. I used a tincture. I used this many milligrams. I found it made me drowsy. I found it made me sleepy. It affected my medication like this or that. So, like, you have a lot more power to your own mental health than you really think you do.
I think that is a wonderful point. Being from the psych background, I'm a huge proponent of log your symptoms, log your mood, log everything, because data is power, honestly. And even if you're not plugging it into a spreadsheet, but you're just putting in it a little, like a graph, or you're just making notes in a journal, like your own reflection on your experiences is incredibly vital to yourself. I think using cannabis as medicine is a lot about putting yourself into the equation when it comes to medicine, and not so much just having somebody dictate to you what it is you do or don't need. Obviously, with consultation with a medical professional, but I think it puts you more into the driver's seat of what do I feel comfortable with.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Diz, for being here today, and honestly, for the most stimulating and wonderful conversation. I would
Oh,
love for you to plug all of your personal stuff for anybody listening, because you are a wonderful, talented, and creative individual, and it is an absolute shame not to plug you.
oh, well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed my time here. I think you're a wonderful host,
No,
and I
thank you.
I feel like your information and your research is top notch. If you want to come check out my music, my band's called Talk Mouth. We're on Spotify. You can find us on SoundCloud as well as Bandcamp. It's two words, so come check us out. We don't really do the Facebook thing right now. I'm not super huge into it.
It's okay. We don't need him in our life. We don't need Mark Zuckerberg in our musical
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I've been, if we're gonna talk about mental health, if you're struggling with mental health, just try to stay away from social media for a little while. Like, just go to the cat picture section where or whatever you need.
Well, thank you so much for your time. All of those links for anybody who's interested will be down below, as well as any future projects that Diz gets up to as time goes on. So thank you again for being here. I really appreciate it. Stay well, Spoonies. We'll talk to you later.